let's get into the giant mailbag.
What crazy thing did City do this week?
It's time for Mattress running the numbers. Ready for the main event?
The main event.
Frequent Miler on the air starts now. Today's main event, doing New Zealand with points. I'm fresh off the plane back from New Zealand, which I did, mostly with points, had a fantastic time. And so we'll be getting into not just what I did, but what are the options for getting to New Zealand with points and staying in New Zealand with points, and where you might want to go off grid a little bit and use some cash, because there's some fantastic things to do that way as well.
You might want to. I mean, if you've seen Greg's pictures, then you'll be like, yes, no, I definitely want to do whatever it is that he did to make that trip happen, because that looked pretty great.
There were some pretty great elements to it. I mean, overall, great trip, and so I will touch on some of the really great parts of it when we get into that in detail. Good. First, of course, we have our giant mailbag, and today's giant mail comes from T.S. Ogle via Apple Podcast Reviews. And I pulled this one out not just because it was complimentary to our podcast, but because he had some humor in that. And this is the first time I can kind of remember a deliberately funny thing in a review like this. Anyway, TS says, consistently the best in the space. Bottom line, Frequent Miler produces consistently the best Points and Miles podcast in the space. If they had a paid tier for the podcast, I'd subscribe, and that's the highest praise I can offer. If you don't already subscribe to this podcast, you'll be more informed, well entertained, and better looking for it. So there was a little asterisk for the after the better looking, where he says terms and conditions apply. Better looking offer not available in all 50 states, U.S. territories, or international jurisdictions.
Thank you very much for your excellent advertising there. You've got a future as an ad person.
That's right. So I enjoyed that, TS, and TS went on. He had more details about our podcast, which I'll let people jump on to Apple Podcast Reviews if you want to read the rest of TS's high praise for our show. Thank you, TS. That was very, very nice.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And you never know. Maybe you will become better looking. I can't say that you won't. I don't know that for sure. So it's a possible side effect of listening to the show.
I think it's probable. In all this time we've been doing the show, we certainly haven't seen any of our listeners while they were listening get uglier.
No.
So most likely they got prettier in some
There's
way.
a good chance. Anyway, yeah. All that yard work, it adds up.
You're looking good out there. Whoever's listening, looking good.
Looking good. Okay. So let's talk about a crazy thing. What crazy thing did Chase and Aeroplan do this week with the Chase Aeroplan Visa card?
Yeah, so I mean, I was off vacationing in New Zealand when this crazy X hit the fan, and so there's really two parts to the crazy. There are.
So and that's why I kind of gave Chase and Aeroplan both credit for the craziness, because so the first thing I guess that we should mention to get this part out is that the Chase Aeroplan Visa is allowing customers now, already started on January 13th, to pay themselves back for travel purchases at a rate of 1.25 cents per point. So you can use your Aeroplan points to cover travel purchases on your Chase Aeroplan Visa at 1.25 cents per point. That could be flights on any airline. You could fly on Spirit and pay for it with your Chase Aeroplan Visa and pay yourself back at 1.25 cents per point with the Aeroplan Visa card, or any other kinds of travel through the end of this year, through the end of 2023. So all the way to December 31st of 2023, and without a limit. When they originally introduced this, it was up to 50,000 points, but now they're saying you could do it an unlimited amount, which I'm going to put an asterisk there, because I don't think it's really going to be quite as unlimited sounds, but at the same time, very, very generous. Anyway, you can use pay yourself back. And so that's crazy, A, because it's very useful, but B, it's crazy because Chase just devalued pay yourself back like 10 minutes ago, right? I mean, like earlier this year.
Right. So for the longest time, since Chase introduced pay yourself back just for their ultimate rewards cards, I'd been hoping that they would add a general travel category like they did with the Aeroplan card just now. Because how great would that be if you had the Sapphire Reserve, for example? You're going to be using it to pay for travel anyway because it has great travel protections, and then to be able to like pay yourself back for those charges and get 1.5 cents per point value would be awesome. But they didn't add that travel category, and to make things worse, they devalued the pay yourself back overall. So now when you pay yourself back for travel categories with the Sapphire Reserve, you're only getting 1.25 cents per point value.
Whoa.
And with
Hang on, Greg. You can't pay yourself back for travel categories with the Sapphire Reserve. You can only pay yourself back for grocery and for gas, and then also charity. Charity is still 1.0. But you said when you pay yourself back for travel, it's 1.25.
Oh, did I say for travel?
Yeah, but no, only for the qualifying categories is what he meant. Yeah. So grocery and gas with the Sapphire Reserve, you get 1.25 cents. Yeah.
And with the Sapphire Preferred, which is the sort of closest equivalent on the Ultimate Reward side to the Aeroplan card, you went down from 1.25 to only 1 cent per point.
1 cent.
Payback when you pay yourself back for categories other than charity. So, wow. So what they did was they made the Aeroplan card look a lot nicer. If you're interested in paying yourself back, it's like better on all accounts than their signature Sapphire cards.
That's insane. I think that's probably the craziest piece of this. And what stood out to me right away, I said, how did they manage that? Because that's what we've been wanting all along. And I feel like, honestly, if the Sapphire Reserve had also only offered 1.25 cents per point, pay yourself back, we would have been mildly disappointed that it wasn't 1.5. But we also probably would have said, well, but then you could book travel anywhere you want and you could use whatever discount codes and things. So maybe that's not really worse than 1.5 through the portal. And we could have had that debate, but they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. They dropped it to 1.25 and limited it to certain categories, which it's been limited all along. General travel was never one of the pay yourself back categories on the Sapphire cards. And then, like you said, I think it's ultimately crazy that the Sapphire Preferred only gets 1 cent per point, because I mean, you could always cash out Ultimate Rewards points at 1 cent per point. You don't have to pay yourself back. You can do that any day of the week, right?
That's a really good point. Like there's no point
right
to paying yourself back with a Sapphire Preferred if you're just getting 1 cent. Why not just cash them out to your bank account and pay your credit bill like you normally do? There's really no difference at that point.
No, there isn't. But that's that makes the Aeroplan card really, really interesting. Now, if you listen to that and you're a little more advanced and you were like, wow, I've got a boatload of Amex points I could transfer over to Aeroplan and redeem them this way, I'm just going to say again that that's probably not going to be as generous as you think. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't transfer over a huge amount. And, I'll say that much and leave it at that, go easy on it. If you're going to do that kind of a thing, I think you're going to need to stick with more reasonable amounts and not.
Yeah, because this was intended to be a Chase thing, really.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so, but it should be, if you want,
I would think,
cash out your Chase Sapphire Preferred points for 1.25 cents, it seems like the way to do that is transfer them to your Aeroplan card if you have that, and then pay for travel and pay yourself back through there. Yeah, that's a way of indirectly cashing out your Sapphire Preferred points for 1.25.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with you. I feel like that would be safe in whatever quantity it is that you want to do it. So I think that's crazy. I think it's good. I think it's really positive, and I think it's smart for a co-branded card to offer that. I think it's weird for Chase to allow the co-branded card to be better in that regard than their signature cards.
Yeah.
But I think it makes a lot of sense for Aeroplan. I mean, why wouldn't you want to make people feel like this is the only card they need for travel? They can, use the miles to book their flights, and they can use the miles to book their hotels and everything else at good value. It makes it feel like this is the one card to rule them all, even though it wouldn't be for me. I can certainly see how they could sell that idea to the average person.
Yeah. And once you spend $1 million on the card in a year, you get a companion pass that's good for a year's worth of unlimited award flights, where you can bring a companion for free. So
and then you cash out your million Aeroplan points at 1.25 cents a piece to pay for all of that travel. So there you go. All right, that was crazy. Let's talk about Mattress running the numbers. And so this week's Mattress running the numbers is a timeshare offer We've seen these before. Choice Privileges has a tie-in with Blue Green Vacations, and the latest Blue Green Vacations offer is that you can stay at one of 8 different resorts for, I believe it's 4 nights. I'll double check that as I'm talking, for $299, 3 nights rather, 3 nights for $299. So you're paying about $100 a night. And you have to attend a timeshare presentation, of course. And in exchange, you get 40,000 Choice Privileges points and a $100 American Express gift card. So $100 and 40,000 points and 3 nights at one of these Blue Green resorts for $299. What do you think, Greg? If you don't care about the stay at all, you don't even really care about staying the 3 nights, you just want 40,000 points and a $100 gift card, is that worth $300?
Well, you're having to, if you just had to pay it, absolutely. But if you have to attend a timeshare presentation, and so you have to think about how painful is that to you. But I mean, I think this is a really solid offer. And so if you're interested in the 3-night stay, and they have some nice looking properties. I haven't stayed at one, but I've seen some, from the outside, and I think they have some nice looking properties. You could probably have a very nice stay at one of these. So I think if you're interested, it sounds like a good deal. I would caution that if you haven't been to a timeshare presentation before, they have this ability. They do a really good sales job, really good. And you'll go in, promising yourself you're not going to buy a timeshare, but then they cast this magic spell and they make it all sound like a really good deal, even though you had done your research and you knew it wasn't a good deal ahead of time. You go in, you're convinced it's a good deal. If you can get away out of that timeshare presentation building, and I think you have to go about at least 500 feet away before the spell is broken. But if you can get away from there before signing anything, the spell will break and you'll be able to, just walk away and accept your 40,000 points and $100. But just, it's just a caution for you that you might end up in a lot of, timeshare debt from buying this thing if you're not careful.
Yeah, if you're somebody who can get convinced to buy something, then you definitely want to, think about this twice and make sure you're attending with somebody who can talk you down off that ledge, because they come, with an offer that's way too high initially, but then they keep coming back with different things and throwing in bells and whistles and trying to make it sound good and trying to figure out why you're saying no and how they can change the deal to make it sound better. So you're right. That's a good caution. And it's 2 hours is what it says on this one. And I always figure that they're going to take about an hour longer than whatever it is that it says it's going to take. So I would bank on 3 hours. And I'm sure some people are like, nope, I set a timer on my phone when I sit down, and at 2 hours, I tell them I'm done. And maybe, if you're good at that kind of thing and being really firm, maybe that'll work out. But oftentimes anyway, I find it takes a while. Now, a couple things like kind of to be aware of with the Choice Privileges one. I've written about this before every time we've posted one of these Blue Green vacation ones. And that's that the terms are kind of weird. It mentions that you have to have a minimum credit score of some sort. And so I've always wondered, like, are they doing a hard pull? And so I would never give them the information for a hard pull for a timeshare presentation. So I don't know how they're verifying that part of it. I know there are other ways they could soft pull it, probably with your license information, but that's something to be aware of and be careful and don't sign things when you're sitting down for one of these. The other thing is the late cancellation. And so the late cancellation policy on these Blue Green vacation ones is if your check-in date is modified less than 14 days in advance, you have to pay a $125 cancellation fee. And if you no show, it's $200. And then there's like some other stuff around refunds and whatnot. So check the post for details. You have to be pretty sure you're going to go. And that's especially this day and age when plans are getting canceled and you may not have any control. It's something to be aware of. You've got to be able to get there. Now, all that said, I find this pretty interesting because the 8 locations are decent, and I've always heard that Blue Green Vacations properties are particularly nice. So, I would give it a shot probably if I had plans to travel to any of those 8 places. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I know one of them is out in like the Pigeon Forge, Tennessee area. I know one was in Myrtle Beach. I think one was Hilton Head. So there's a few places that I'm sure people would find intriguing for the cost anyway here, especially considering the 40,000 points. And we didn't even really address that. We probably should have. How much are choice points worth? The 40,000 points we were worth about what?
Yeah. I
$300-ish.
can't remember what our latest reasonable redemption value is off the top of my head, but I think it was around zero point 0.8 maybe
I'm pretty sure that's what it
cents per
was too.
point.
Yeah.
So you could do the math on that. And
$320. Oh no,
it,
0.68. 0.68 is our
oh,
most
we were
reasonable.
off.
So yeah, I thought 0.8 also, but that's what it says anyway. So 0.68 times 400, we're talking what, $272 worth of points and a $100 gift card. So a small win, not a huge win if you don't value the
Yeah.
stay, but if you do value the stay, nice deal.
Yeah, and let me say that, just because our reasonable redemption value is that low, we do find it very easy to get 1 point or better from choice points when you kind of cherry pick your awards, and in some cases you could get a lot more than that.
Great
So it's not a bad deal. And yeah, so
yeah, great point. Great point. Yeah, choice privileges points can be quite valuable depending on how you use them. So you can certainly do much better than that. Good point. All right. Speaking of points, let's talk about awards we booked this week. Now, you did a lot of award stays. So I don't know. Are we going to talk about
so
that
we'll
mostly in the
hold
main
that
event?
for
Okay.
the main event.
That's what I
So
figured.
how
So
about you?
for me, well, I booked a stay and it wasn't an award stay, but I thought this is the best place in the show where it fit to mention that Capital One Shopping continues to come with these crazy offers. And so I got an offer earlier this week for 18% back at Marriott. So, I mean, 18% back is pretty significant. And, and I looked at a trip that I was planning next summer in Europe and I found a Residence Inn that was like just over 100 euros a night. So 18% back too. I thought, oh man, this is a great deal. Is better than booking an award stay. So, it's always worth looking for those things. Now, my plans on that might change, but I don't have to book a prepaid stay. Of course, I booked a rate that I'll pay at the hotel. So I don't expect that I'll earn the Capital One shopping rewards until after the stay. And in this case, the stay isn't until 7 months from now. So it's going to be a while down the road. So I obviously will have to remember that. Is it going to track right? I don't know for sure, but my experience is that usually these things do track properly. It's just not until after you complete your stay. So I expect it will. I used it for some other Marriott stays recently and it tracked just fine. Now that wasn't 18% on my other ones. It was like the 6% they've been offering me on the app or in the website. I can't remember which it is, but somewhere I've been getting 6% Marriott and those have all tracked fine. So I expect this one will too, but it's just a good reminder that whatever browser you have the Capital One extension installed in, do some searches, like go to Marriott now and then if you want to get a good offer for Marriott or IHG. I heard others getting the same offer for IHG the day that I got.
I just got that myself recently, just a few days ago. Yep,
it's probably the same day. So
Viator is another one. I keep getting big offers from them.
Yeah,
from Capital One for them. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
for sure. So just a reminder, you play around with the browser where you have the extension installed because the offers keep coming. I keep seeing excellent offers through Capital One Shopping.
Yeah, I think if you have a browser where you do all of your shopping and both for stuff and for travel, where you do the research, but you don't normally do the paying through that, because normally we always advise having a separate portal having a separate browser for doing portal rewards. So figure out what you're going to buy in one browser and do your shopping in the other. But in the browser used for figuring out what you're going to buy, have the Capital One extension on there so that it sees where you're going and you'll get emails offering you great deals every now and then. There's no obvious rhyme or reason about when they send those deals, but
but they sometimes do.
At some point you should get them.
Yeah, and I want to mention very quickly here, we have had some readers report difficulty with things tracking with Capital One Shopping. There have been some readers that have had really bad experiences, at least from what they say. And some people have asked, well, why are you pushing this? Because some readers have had problems. And I'm not trying to push it. I want to be clear. We don't have any sort of affiliate relationship on this right now. So there's nothing that we're getting out of talking about Capital One Shopping. It's just that we've been getting great offers, and everything that I've done except for Saks Fifth Ave, everything else that I've done that I expected to track is tracked. I pushed the envelope and tried some things that I didn't think would work, and those didn't work. But all of the orders and bookings and things that I've made otherwise have all tracked and eventually moved over to paid. So, and I think it's been the same situation for you. And we've done quite a bit of this and quite a bit of portal shopping overall. So I don't know why some people are having issues with it, but we certainly haven't seen that between the two of us, right?
That's right. And I've had the exact same experience as Nick, which is that for some reason, my more recent Saks Fifth Avenue purchases haven't tracked correctly, meaning I didn't get the payout I was expecting. Whereas, in the beginning of last year, they did track correctly. But everything else has tracked perfectly, and I've gotten the payout I expected. And even if I didn't buy the thing that the email suggested. And what I mean by that is you might go shopping online at Dell, for example, and be looking at a certain product, and then you get an email for that product saying, say, get back, I don't know, $300 if you buy this laptop or something. You don't have to buy that exact laptop. That's an example of a percentage rebate. And so you could go in and buy something else and you should still get that high percentage.
Yeah, it just happened to me earlier this week, in fact, because I bought a portable monitor for my laptop, but I gotten an email or had an advertised offer in Capital One Shopping for Bose headphones for 15% back on Bose headphones at Dell. And I clicked through that link and I bought a monitor, and the 15% tracked.
Yeah. And a reminder, we say this every time, but it bears repeating. You do not need a Capital One credit card. You do not need a Capital One bank account. You do not need any relationship with Capital One in order to sign up for Capital One Shopping. You could pay with any credit card you want. It really has very little to do with Capital One, the whole experience, other than the name Capital One Shopping. So,
right.
All right.
Okay. So then next up, I think we have, what is it? Are we ready for the main event?
Time for the main event, doing New Zealand with points. So let's start with, I'll give a brief overview of the trip I just took, and then we'll dive into ways to book flights to New Zealand with points and ways to stay in New Zealand with points beyond what I did. So what I did was there was a United award sale, or maybe mistake, we don't know, but basically they were offering, we were able to find 60,000 points with United miles to fly to one way in business class to almost anywhere far away in the world. So there was like Asia, Maldives, New Zealand, so I booked New Zealand. I had booked a few different one-way awards because I wasn't sure exactly when I would fly and when I'd fly back. Ended up, of course, canceling the ones that I didn't want. In the meantime, somewhere along the way, a Qantas award availability opened up. So I was able to book business class Qantas to fly through Dallas, and then American Airlines home to Detroit from there. And so I booked that with more miles. I mean, it cost me 80,000 American Airlines miles. It would have cost fewer with Alaska, but I chose American just because I have so many of those miles. And canceled my United flight. I did that really only because I wanted to try out Qantas business class. I've never had a chance to fly them before, whereas I have flown United Polaris business class before. So that was my flight route. And I guess let me quickly give really tiny reviews of each of those.
Before we even talk about different ways to get there and places you stay and all that, I'm very interested in a comparison there. Talk to me about United Polaris and what you thought about it. I know you've been on it before, and about Qantas separately, and then compare the two. I'm very curious.
Sure. Yeah. So United Polaris, this is on, I think it was the 787 Dreamliner. Just as I had flown before to Japan, it was the same kind of airplane. They have these angled, seats, the reverse herringbone design, and they're pretty private, even though they don't have doors. Just the way they're angled away from the aisles and sort of the walls that are partially on the sides and everything, it makes the seats feel pretty private, which is really nice. I also really love the seats themselves seem to be plusher, softer, whatever, than most other business class flights I've been on. So I actually find them comfortable to sleep on, which I've not found on very many business class products at all. In this case, they automatically provided mattress pads. Apparently, on my flight to Japan, which was under 12 hours, apparently I could have asked for a mattress pad, but I didn't know that. But on longer flights like this one, they provide it automatically. They provide pajamas. They provide slippers, which Qantas did not. Even when I asked, they said no slippers for you.
Oh my goodness!
So
thank
that
goodness
was
you
Qantas
had like 16 pairs in your bag,
fail.
right? From the great hotel you stayed at on the way.
You know what? I had dumped them all because
man.
I was pretty sure Qantas would have them, and our bags were overflowing. So no slippers for me on the return flight. Yeah. So anyway, I found the seat very, very, very comfortable. The evening meal was excellent. It's presented all at once, even though the menu suggests that it'll be presented in courses. It's not. It's just all at once. Boom. And that's fine with me. And the only reason I even noted that is I asked the flight attendant, "Hey, can I have it all at once?" And she's like, "That's the only way we do it."
You sure can.
Yeah, but it was excellent. It was really good food. Breakfast was meh. It was sort of the I don't know what to compare it to. I guess you could compare it to a cheap hotel brand's free breakfast, the sort of runny eggs and not many choices. So but still, both of us, my wife and I, slept really well on the outbound flight. Woke up as we were getting an hour or two away from Auckland, and so we were pretty close to adjusted to the time zone just on the way out, which was great. Also, I had on my side of the aisle, the flight attendants were notably awesome, or at least the flight attendant. There was one with short hair. It was incredible. And this is like a really minor detail, but whenever I had any kind of trash at all, like you open up the blanket and you have all that plastic, or you just have trash from different things, the flight attendants picked that stuff up like almost within a minute each time, which I found amazing. I haven't flown anyone in business class who's done that, and so I really like that. I mean, it's such a weird little thing to care about, but I really like that. So I was impressed. I had a great flight on United.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. I mean, much better than I would normally expect. I think that last point you made about picking up the trash from the blankets and that sort of thing as soon as it's kind of created, that's the type of service that I generally tend to expect more on foreign airlines, and specifically some of the major Asian or Middle Eastern carriers, maybe, but not something I would expect on United. So that's great.
Yeah. One minor issue, which was true on both Qantas and United, is that the menus suggest that there's sort of a mid-flight snack. And if you don't know that the way to get that mid-flight snack is to go up to the galley, and if you're sitting around waiting for it, it's not going to come to you. And so that kind of was a problem for my wife. I didn't think to mention it to her. And she had skipped the evening meal because we had actually eaten dinner before the flight.
Rookie mistake.
And so she woke up hungry well before breakfast was served, and didn't know until I got up a little while later and showed her.
See, now I wouldn't
that she could just go up and get the snack.
I wouldn't have made that mistake, because I would have known that on United I do not want to wake up hungry, because I would not have expected there to be any fix for that at all on a United flight. So I would have definitely eaten, just proactively thinking, I have no idea what's going to happen, so I'm going to eat now while I can, while they offer me food. But no, that's a really good point. I've actually noticed that on several of the trips we've taken this year, actually, not just on United, but on other carriers too, where those like mid-flight snack type things have been sitting in the galley. Like everybody should know that they're there. And I mean, I've flown enough that I feel like if that's something that everybody should know, I would have probably known it before this year. I feel like that's, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like that's a newer development, but it's become
I don't know if it's newer or if I'm flying more like longer flights where it's an issue. It's hard to tell in my case, but I don't understand why the airlines don't just let people know. Why does the menu suggest that this stuff is going to be coming to you? Why doesn't it just say, available in the galley from these hours or something like that, in
Oh
the
yeah.
middle of your flight, go look in the galley and
Yeah.
see what's there. That would just solve the issue, and it wouldn't cost them anything to
Oh,
do that. I
totally.
don't understand that at all.
Totally. No, I had the
But
same situation because I came back to the seat with my little chocolate bar or something, and my wife's like, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "Oh, well, they're just up in the galley." And I didn't
yeah,
think to proactively tell her that either. Luckily, she noticed that, and then she went and got a snack for herself
yeah,
too. But yeah,
yeah.
otherwise, who would know?
Very similar.
Who would
Very
know?
similar. What happened with my wife,
Yeah.
and also in the galley, it's often on one side where if you happen to be on that side of the plane and going to the bathroom, you would notice it. But if
Right.
you're on the other side of the plane, you go to the bathroom, you're not going to see
Right.
that food that's out.
Right.
And so you have to actually walk past the flight attendants, brush by them to see that there's food there. So it's not even something that you're likely to notice by accident if you're on that half of the plane. So yeah, crazy stuff. Okay, so that was a United flight. Qantas, so both were 787s. Both had in business class 1-to-1 configuration, meaning there's one row of seats along the window, then there's an aisle, then there's two seats together, and then there's an aisle, and then one more seat against the other window. That's very common in almost all international business class products these days. So they're both arranged that way. The Qantas seats were, I think, wider. So if you're a big person, they might be more comfortable for you from a width point of view. What I didn't like, there are two things I didn't like about the physical seats. One is that they were wide open, like you didn't feel private at all, and so that to me just made it's like a bit harder to sleep when it feels like you're wide open with like everyone else in the airplane. The other thing is the seats just weren't as comfortable as United. So both of us had a lot more trouble falling asleep and staying asleep on the Qantas seats than we did on the United seats. So the physical product, we liked United a lot better.
Wow, I think that's kind of surprising. I wouldn't have expected to hear that you preferred.
Right,
Although
right. I didn't
I say that, but
expect that either.
everybody seems to like Polaris business, right? I mean, I feel like I do often hear that people like Polaris business, but I don't ever think of the U.S. carriers as having like a super competitive product internationally.
But keep in mind when United says Polaris, that's a wide range of things. So when Maisie and I flew from Bergen to the US on Polaris, it was a daytime flight, but it was just a 2-2 configuration, meaning Maisie and I were right next to each other. So she didn't have direct aisle access because she was at the window. It was still a very nice flight, but it's a whole different thing. You wouldn't want that for an overnight flight, or at least a very long.
No, you're right. You're right. They brand everything with Polaris business, and when I say that, I mean like what I think of as the real Polaris. But I didn't clarify that, so
it's good.
Yeah.
It's not groundbreaking. It's not Cutter, but
right.
And it's not Turkish, but it's good. It's good.
Very good.
The other thing I want to say about Qantas, some notable things. They service wise, I started to set up my seat as a bed because they do provide padding and everything. And a flight attendant rushed over and said, "Let me do that for you." And so I went to the bathroom to change into my pajamas, which again, both airlines provided. And when I came back, my bed was all made up, which was a very nice touch. Although let me say that did not happen to my wife. She had to look at how mine was configured. The padding actually like tucks in like a fitted sheet to the seat, which is also very nice. So it stays put. The United one is just lays there on top, so it can move around, which is not great. But so that was a nice touch, at least for me. And the other thing I'd say, the food was notably better than United's. It was really good. The dinner, I actually asked the guy who came around taking our orders, what do you think of the steak? And he said, yeah, he sort of was non-committal. And so So I said, well, what would you recommend on here? And he said, the fish is excellent. And I know you don't like fish, Nick, but I got the fish and it was actually one of the best fish dishes I've had in quite a while. It was really tremendously good. So good that like if it was at a restaurant, I would have probably said, oh yeah, I'm going to return to this restaurant. It was that good.
Wow.
And the other notable thing about the food, breakfast was they had a ton of options, and it was I can't say it was great, like it wasn't great restaurant quality, but it was really nice that what they had you do at night is fill out a card and just check all the things you wanted for breakfast. So that was very nice. So much better breakfast options than United, much better. Even though the United food was good, this was much better.
Well, I've got good news for you. If you want to go back, if you want to go back to that restaurant, it's only going to cost you 80,000 American Airlines miles. You can go back anytime you want.
If you could find a ward availability,
that's true.
Which Qantas is known to be very stingy on. So that's why I jumped on that when I could. I would not, it was a indirect route compared to what I was able to fly on United. So doing it again, I wouldn't go the indirect route just to fly Qantas, because
restaurant wasn't that good.
Restaurant wasn't that good. Well, I prefer, to me, the seat and the privacy is more important than the food and the service. So
right. Yeah. I'm surprised though to hear that the service was overall just kind of so I think is what you're saying, because I mean you got your bed made up and everything, your wife didn't, and so overall the service wasn't memorably good.
It was mixed. It was mixed. Yeah. It other than that one incident of him rushing over to do my bed, like there was nothing that distinguished it from a U.S. carrier service and that I noticed.
Yeah. Well, good to know. Good to hear. All right, so those were, I think, two interesting reviews, and I think probably surprising for a lot of people, in that it sounds like you would pick, if you had them both to choose from, you'd probably pick United Polaris over Qantas if they were both flying the same route. Is that fair to say? You would have taken the United Polaris, or you would take it?
That's again? True. If Qantas doesn't update their cabins, yeah. If they got new seats, I'd probably pick Qantas. But as things stand now, I know United is great. I'm very happy with the United Polaris seats. So
awesome.
United.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about how you can book that, because there's not a United flash sale on today. So you can't book it for 60,000 miles right now. And Greg is totally right that you may be able to book Qantas for 80,000 points, but A, you'd have to find availability first. And B, if you did find the availability on Qantas and you have Alaska miles, then you may prefer to use your Alaska mileage plan miles, because they would charge 55,000 miles one way to get to anywhere in the South Pacific. So you could fly on Qantas in business class, or you could fly on Fiji Airways in business class for 55,000 points to get to New Zealand. Either way, you're going to have to connect. Fiji Airways would connect in Fiji. Qantas, you would probably connect in Sydney, although it depends. They do have some routes to Melbourne, and I think also to Brisbane out of Los Angeles, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong about that, but you have to double check. Anyway, and I think they fly to San Francisco also. So you got a few options. Now, if you book with Alaska miles, you can add a connector on Alaska. So let's say you're based in New York. You could fly Alaska Airlines from New York to Los Angeles, or New York to San Francisco. I can't recall if Alaska flies New York to Dallas. That used to be a Virgin America route. I'm not sure if they kept that up or not, but the point is you could book an Alaska leg along with Qantas, but I believe still at this point you cannot, book a connector flight on American, on a flight on an airline other than Alaska. You can only mix Alaska and one partner. You can't mix two partners on an award. That's always been the rule anyway. I don't think it changed with the award chart update. Do you know any differently than me on that?
I'm not aware of that changing, but we should keep an eye on that, because I wouldn't be surprised if it changes now that they're getting more integrated into one world.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great if it does change. So that would be your cheapest way to book it if you want to fly Qantas or Fiji Airways. Then American is a good option if you've got a lot of American Airlines miles, and certainly a lot of us probably still do have some left over from that Simply Miles deal of 2021 or whatever that was. So if you do, that's a good way to do it. Now, United Polaris, if you want to fly United to get to Australia, what are the best ways to do that with points and miles? I think I think,
or to New Zealand,
or to New Zealand rather. I'm
Australia or
sorry.
New
I
Zealand.
was saying Australia because of Qantas, and yeah, it's throwing me off.
Yeah, yeah.
To New Zealand. You're right. That's what we're talking about. So I think United flies to New Zealand. First of all, which airports do they fly from? San Francisco is where you flew from. Is that correct?
So, excuse me. The only one I know of is what I flew, which was San Francisco to Auckland, New Zealand.
That's
the
what I
other
thought,
ways
yeah.
to get there on United is to fly to Australia, and then you'd have to have award availability on Air New Zealand to get to New Zealand on the same ticket, which Air New Zealand doesn't release a lot of space. So
certainly not in
you'll be
business
probably
class.
flying
Certainly not in business
yeah,
class.
you'd probably be flying economy on that
Yeah.
leg, which is about a 3-hour flight or so, depending on where you're going.
Right. So that's usually fine with me for that length of flight. So anyway, so the United flight, United is going to charge you, I think at best, correct me if I'm wrong, around 80,000 miles. Is that usually the rate for to New Zealand, or is it 100K? I don't even know because they don't have an award chart, right? So
that sounds
who knows?
right though. 80K range. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably right.
And so then the same type of pricing through Avianca Life Miles, I believe it's 80K through Avianca Life Miles also. If you're going to book with Air Canada, that's another option for booking that. Now, if you book from San Francisco, I got to double check the distance from San Francisco to Auckland because I think that would actually cost you less than some other options, although Aeroplan, I think, could become a better option overall. So 6,500 miles in distance. So yeah, I was right. That'd be only 75,000 Aeroplan miles if you fly just from San Francisco. Now, if you're going to go from the East Coast, that's going to bump you up to the 87,500 mile distance band. So that would be another way to potentially book that. Now, the advantage of booking with Aeroplan, of course, is that you can add a stopover for 5,000 miles. So if you were to book San Francisco to Auckland for 75,000 miles, you could stop in Auckland and then continue on somewhere else on, whichever carriers you want. And remember, they partner with not only Air New Zealand, but Air Canada also partners with a number of other airlines that serve Auckland, namely Virgin Australia. If you want to visit anywhere in Australia also, that would be another good option.
Yep. Yeah. So great points there. So that's all for flying Star Alliance. What about if you want to fly One World or SkyTeam or something else?
Yeah. So if you want to fly SkyTeam, to tell you the truth, I don't even know. Good luck. Good luck to you if you want to fly SkyTeam. I suppose probably booking Korean through like Delta may work, but who knows what Delta is going to charge you. Also, Air France, I believe you could probably book through Flying Blue. But again, awards to Australia are hard to find to begin with. So programs that don't have award charts are not really your friend in general when it comes to Australia, because you have no idea what it's going to cost. And I can tell you, when you have no idea and it's something with a high demand of Australia and New Zealand, rather, I keep saying Australia, then it's going to be a lot with those types of programs. So
right,
your best bet, if you want to get to New Zealand, if you're really lucky, in terms of the number of miles, the cheapest is going to be using ANA, because ANA on Star Alliance Airlines, I believe, and I just said that without looking at it, but from my memory, be 120,000 miles round trip on Star Alliance. Now, that would mean probably flying via Japan, I would guess. You're probably going to fly from the US to Japan and then Japan onward. And the thing of that is that the only route served from between Japan and New Zealand is Air New Zealand between Tokyo and Auckland. And good luck finding award availability in business class on that. Not necessarily impossible. I did see a seat recently, but not likely.
So ANA doesn't fly that themselves?
Unfortunately, they don't. So you could, of course, fly to Australia and fly via Australia and then have that connector onto New Zealand from somewhere on Air New Zealand, again, accepting the fact that connector is probably going to be an economy.
Of course, before, when we were talking about booking a United flight, we were sort of making the assumption that United magically opened award space from San Francisco to Auckland. If that happens, you can use ANA miles to book that, but only if they have both outbound and return flights available. So that's tricky because you have to book round trip. However, you could add a free stopover on a one-way award. So if you found something like San Francisco to Auckland, and then a return flight from Sydney, for example, to somewhere in the US. I think they have a few flights. Then you should be able to book that and get yourself between
Auckland and Sydney.
well, actually you could I think you could add the leg from New Zealand to Sydney or to wherever in Australia you have to fly back from, but it'd probably be easier if you can't find a ward availability, just book that yourself separately. Then you could use ANA for 120,000 miles round trip.
And if you can actually find availability on ANA, if you know, because finding it on United is probably going to be a difficult proposition, if not impossible, especially
very difficult.
You know, you get lucky and find it one way. Good luck finding it on the way back. If you can find availability on ANA. Now, ANA does not fly to New Zealand, but they do fly to Australia. So you could fly round trip to Australia on ANA metal for 105,000 miles round trip. I mean, that's 52.5K each way. That is pretty amazing. So if you can find the space, that could be a great option. Remember that ANA allows a stopover on a round trip award. So you could stop over in Tokyo on the way, potentially, for that 105K. So that's, I think, a pretty darn good deal. Now, I mentioned the stopover, and I'm going to come back to this in a second, but the stopover can be useful even if you didn't have a burning desire to visit Tokyo on the way, because maybe you'll find an available seat between, let's say, New York and Tokyo, and you find an available seat between Tokyo and Sydney, but they don't line up on the same 2 days, right? They don't line up on the day you're going to arrive and the day you'd have to fly out. Maybe they're a few days apart. And if that happens, then being able to book with a program that allows a stopover is really valuable, because if you book with a program that doesn't allow a stopover, you're not going to be able to put those two things together. So I think it's helpful for being able to look and not just search New York to Sydney, for instance, because you don't need that. You need New York to Tokyo, and then start every day for the next few days, Tokyo to Sydney, searching for that connector.
Right. That's and if you're forced to have a little mini vacation in Tokyo, oh well.
Right. There are worse things. So that's, I think, a good one to keep in mind. Another one, when we talk about Star Alliance there and the 120,000 ANA miles, and we should mention ANA is an Amex transfer partner. So you would need to have Amex membership rewards points to transfer to ANA in order to be able to book this. But another option to keep in mind in terms of getting to Asia. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a second, to what I want to talk about on that in a second. But if you're looking at other ways to get to Asia, Asiana might be another option to consider. But now I'm talking about getting to Asia, and you wrote a great post years ago that I feel like we're kind of touching on and dancing around. So it was how to book impossible awards or something like that. Can you tell me a little bit about your approach to impossible awards like this? Because it's really, really difficult to get an award to New Zealand or to Australia, either way.
It really is. If you're looking for, a single award flight from US to Australia or New Zealand, good luck. I mean, as I talked about, I got them in both directions, but they're rare. And so, you have to jump on it when that happens. But if you don't have that flexibility, another option is to book an award to a part of the world that is closer to Australia and New Zealand, but easier to get to. And so what is often available in awards is to fly to Asia. I mean, Asia is a very large area, obviously. So there are lots of options. I mean, Nick just mentioned Japan as being like one option for some awards, but in the post I wrote back when, I can't even remember where, it might have been Seoul, Korea or something like that I had as an example. But the idea is to book awards to some intermediary place and then book awards from there. Hopefully you can enjoy that intermediary place and then book awards from there to Australia or New Zealand and then enjoy your trip there, and do the same in the reverse. So that's the basic idea. It does take, kind of knowledge about what routes tend to have good award availability, or, you could use various tools to try to find them. And, it's something that if you have enough persistence, you should be able to find something. And in that post I read, I mean, my example was like booking 4 people during the Christmas holidays to get to Australia. and I showed that it was possible in business class. And so that's like one of those types of things that an award booker would say is impossible to do direct, which I agree. But doing it with an intermediary place like Asia or Middle East should be possible.
And now that you mentioned an intermediary place like Asia or the Middle East, the program that I think comes to mind for an impossible award like this, and I speak from some experience in that I've been looking and trying to piece something together myself for the return from a trip later this year, is Air Canada Aeroplan. Air Canada Aeroplan is a go-to for a trip like this these days because of their partnerships. So it gives you way more ways to piece this impossible award together, because like Greg's saying, you could transit through Tokyo perhaps to get to Australia or New Zealand. You could transit potentially through Seoul. Like you said, I think the only Air Canada partner that serves Seoul is Air New Zealand. So that again is very difficult to find business class award availability in a long flight. Another option though is Singapore. And Singapore has a flight from Singapore to Auckland, and they partner with Air Canada, and Air Canada seems to have access to more Singapore business class availability than other partners. So very similar to Alaska. So there's at least a chance that you would find a Singapore business class flight available there. And of course, if you can't find it to Auckland, Singapore serves a whole bunch of other places in Australia too. So you could search through Brisbane or search through Melbourne or through Sydney. And they also partner with Virgin Australia. So if you can find a way to get to Australia in general, you've got options to get to New Zealand, either on Air New Zealand or on Virgin Australia. Virgin Australia is better about business class availability, but I think it's just, recliner seats from Australia to New Zealand on Air New Zealand, because they just fly the smaller aircraft these days. So rather on Virgin Australia is what I was trying to say there. But then, of course, you have the Middle East carriers too. So you've got both Etihad and Emirates. They both serve various cities in Australia. So again, if you're booking through Air Canada, if you can find availability on either Emirates or Etihad to get to Australia, then you could combo that with a flight on either Air New Zealand or Virgin Australia to get to Auckland. And I'm saying Auckland, but of course they also serve other airports in New Zealand. So you could skip Auckland altogether. If you really want to get to Christchurch or one of the other places that Greg will tell us that we ought to visit there, then you can get to different parts of New Zealand if you get first to Australia. So you've got those options. And then, of course, you pick up a multitude of options for getting to Asia, because Air Canada also partners with Gulf Air and with Oman Air. And so if you can get to the Middle East, you can get beyond there into Asia. So you may have to put together a few stops. And this is a trip where you may have to accept that it's going to take you a few stops probably to get to the South Pacific, but it'll cost you 115,000 Air Canada Aeroplan miles one way. You could add a stopover on the way for an additional 5,000 miles. So at 120K one way, that's way more expensive than those options I talked about on ANA. But you also have access to way more partnerships. So there's a much better chance of being able to piece together that impossible award with a program like Aeroplan, because they partner with so many different options to get there. Now, it's going to take you a while to search all of those options and find the availability. It's kind of inconvenient. So this does take some time. But if you want to visit New Zealand or you want to visit anywhere else in that region, it usually is going to just take you a while to piece things together. Greg got pretty lucky here.
I did. I got very lucky, and I think there was more availability than usual because of New Zealand just sort of recently opening up from their COVID restrictions. And so, I think the carriers were a little more open to awards.
Yeah. One last thing I want to mention on the piecing things together is also consider piecing together awards through different programs. Because, for instance, if you were to find ANA award availability to Tokyo, know that in low season, that's 75,000 miles round trip from the United States. So you can fly to Tokyo for 75,000 round trip and then piece that together with something else. Like American Airlines has a pretty good award chart from there. It's 40,000 miles each way to the South Pacific. And you could fly Fiji Airways, for instance, from Tokyo to New Zealand, for 40,000 miles each way. So you could piece that together, and in the end, you'd pay about 155,000, I guess, if I just did the math right, in order to get there and back round trip. But that's much better than not going, because you went to some pretty incredible places, right?
And that's not a bad price to pay, I don't think, for that type of trip at all.
Right.
That's pretty good. Yeah, no, that would be great. Okay, so let's talk about uh, what are your options for staying in New Zealand. So I'll go over what I did and then talk about some other things that I didn't do, but would might be interested in the future. We flew into Auckland, which is on the North Island. It's the north end of the North Island and the biggest city in New Zealand. And we stayed for 3 nights at the Park Hyatt Auckland, which is a pretty new hotel in Auckland, and it's a Category 5, I think, Hyatt, which means you can't use your Category 1 through 4 certificates, but it also means it's fairly reasonable price with points for a Park Hyatt. So I think I paid 23,000 points per night. So it was on peak for Category 5, if I remember right. Like standard, it would be, I think, 20,000 points per night. Um, the funny thing is, because of all that United award availability, there were lots of people who play the points and miles game who went to New Zealand during this time, and so while at the Park Hyatt New Zealand, I hung out with the guys who do the No Mas Coach blog. So John and Ben, it was fun to hang out with, and Jamie, who does Forward Cabin, was there too. So we all hung out together and did some things together there. And John and Ben had as soon as they booked the Park Hyatt, which was almost a full year ago, they had applied a suite upgrade award. In my case, so they were in a suite. In my case, I had waited quite a while before booking this Park Hyatt because I was unsure of what our plans were. We weren't originally flying right into Auckland. So there weren't suites available for me. So in my case and Jamie's case, we were both upgraded to water view rooms where you can look out at not just the water, but also the Sky Tower, which is a very, very similar to the CN Tower in Toronto. It's one of those big towers with a rotating restaurant or something at the top. And what's special there is we were there over New Year's Eve, and that tower is where they shoot off the fireworks from. Amazing. So being able to, from your room, watch the fireworks across the water was a pretty cool feature of that Park Hyatt. Let me say that if it wasn't called a Park Hyatt, I would give this hotel 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. It was great. The rooms were terrific. The breakfast benefit was terrific for a Hyatt Globalist. You get full buffet and menu breakfast, and all of the other Globalist benefits you come to expect. As a Park Hyatt, though, I was disappointed.
Oh, yeah?
To be honest. Yeah. So it was just missing some of the touches that I expect. For example, there was no turn down service at all. Now, that sounds like such a ridiculous thing to complain about.
The horror.
Right. How am I going to get in bed if no one turns down the covers?
There's no chocolate? Come on. How
we figured it out, but it's just that I just found that so weird as a Park Hyatt, because Park Hyatt is like the top brand for Hyatt, top luxury brand. I've never stayed at a Park Hyatt that didn't have an elaborate like turn down service where they provide something nice each evening, chocolates or whatever. And so that was kind of weird. The housekeeping was very inconsistent with things like, they didn't replace the coffee pods, for example. And so we were using those each morning, and that was, I don't like to have to, call down for something like that and have to wait around for it. Right.
I mean, it shouldn't. When you're staying at a top tier property, you shouldn't have to. That's
right. Now, all of that may have been unique because most New Zealanders go on vacation during the time we were there over the New Year. And so they probably were, as is most of New Zealand, very short on staff during that time. So it could be that turn down service is a usual thing when they have enough staff, but didn't at this time. I wouldn't doubt that at all. The other thing this Park Hyatt did not do was, and again, this sounds so spoiled of me, but
wait. There were no slippers? Were there no slippers?
No, there were slippers.
Okay, well,
Thank
you.
I think we might have had to request them. I
Goodness.
can't remember, but we did get slippers.
Okay. But the other thing,
but the other thing is that the Globalist free breakfast benefit did not include room service breakfast, which is something that a number of Park Hyatts do offer to Globalists. This one did not, and it affected us one morning in a bad way, but that's not a big deal. As I said from the start, though, if it wasn't named a Park Hyatt, I'd say this is a fantastic Category 5 Hyatt. You know, it really is really nice hotel.
Good to know. Great
concierge service. You know, so anyway, very good hotel.
Very good hotel.
Very good hotel.
I'm glad that it's a very good hotel. Not a Park Hyatt, but it's a very good hotel.
Yes. So we stayed there 3 nights, only 23,000 points per night. That was a good deal compared to, I don't know how much it would have cost, probably 600 US or something per night, something like that. The one notable thing, in case people want to know, we did an all-day tour where we went to Hobbiton to see the little, the Hobbit village that was built for the, originally for the Lord of the Rings movies, and then it was expanded for the Hobbit movies. And that was really nice, actually. It was what surprised me about it as a fan of Lord of the Rings things is that one of the things I liked so much about it was it's actually just beautiful. Like that Hobbit village is just beautiful. And even if you're not a fan at all, you know, it's a beautiful place to visit.
I can confirm that. I haven't been there, but I saw your videos online, and I hate Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I'm not at all interested. Not at all interested in Lord of the Rings. But I saw that and I was like,
wow,
such
a weird guy.
I know. It's boring. It's so slow. They're just walking forever. Anyway, what I wanted to say was it looked gorgeous. I saw the videos and I was like, wow, gorgeous. I would probably go visit that, even though I hate Lord of the Rings. I would go see that. It looked gorgeous.
Right. And then as part of that all-day tour, we also went to these glowworm caves where these worms actually have like LED lights attached to their butt somehow. And so they glow in the dark. And that was really cool. Just walking around the caves was neat. And then you get on a little boat and see the glowworms. So that was Auckland. And I guess I should mention that the concierge recommended going to Mount Eden, which was only like a 15-minute drive away, to watch the sunset, and that was a spectacular thing to do. And what a great recommendation that was from the concierge at the Park Hyatt. So thank you, Nick. His name was Nick, the concierge there.
Of course. Good guy. That's a good guy.
You gotta like Nick. And we flew then Air New Zealand economy to Christchurch, which is only a little over an hour flight, I think. We just paid cash. The flights were cheap. In retrospect, I should have booked through Capital One Travel in order to collect on the Capital One Travel reimbursement of things like that. But I don't think I did for that one. I just forgot all about that.
If you were to run into a situation though where those flights are expensive, of course, keep in mind Air New Zealand, Star Alliance, so via Turkish 7,500 miles each way, via United because it's so short, probably 8,000 miles each way for domestic, and Jetstar also serves that route because I know that because I booked my family on it once. So Jetstar is very inexpensive in general, but if prices happen to be high, Qantas, keep in mind you can use Qantas miles to book Jetstar. So just my little interjection on award booking.
All good to know.
Proceed.
Thank you. So Christchurch, we stayed 3 nights, and we stayed in an SLH property, which is bookable with Hyatt points again. And this was known as one of the best hotels in Christchurch. It's called the George.
And if you saw Greg's pictures, you'd be like, that's only one of the best. It looked pretty spectacular.
No,
I'm thinking Eichardt.
You're thinking Eichardt's in
we'll get there in a
Queenstown.
minute.
Yeah, that's coming up. But the George was actually a bit run down. Like, it's a very old hotel, and from the outside it doesn't look like anything because it looks very worn. On the inside though, it's very boutique, so, and in a good way. Like so the person at the desk is very great greeting you and providing like advice, where should I go to eat? What should I do to walk around? Things like that. So it was very like friendly place to be. The base rooms, which is what you get into if you use Hyatt points to book, are small. Bathrooms are very small, and the bathroom sinks are at best micro sinks, which really bothered me for things like shaving and stuff. It was difficult. The first room we were very unhappy with it. It had a bad smell to it. And it was like a musty smell, but I asked the guy at the desk about it. They were totally full, but he very quickly moved us up to a junior suite for the first night, and then a slightly better room than the first room for the next 2 nights. So they were great about handling that issue. The junior suite was nicer, bigger, but and it actually had a small balcony. The other rooms did not. The junior suite, most hotels would classify it as a room. Like there was nothing sweet about it, SUITE,
right?
But it was sweet compared to SWEET compared to the first room for sure. It was nice to have the extra room and not have a bad smell.
It smelled a bit sweeter
than a nice view. So anyway, long way of saying you don't stay here necessarily for the rooms, but they weren't bad. It had a very nice free breakfast benefit for I think everybody who stayed, but I'm not really sure whether that was SLH provides free breakfast, but you're only guaranteed free continental breakfast when you book through Hyatt, but they give us full both menu and buffet breakfast.
Nice.
So that was great. And the location, terrific. You're minutes from incredibly nice free botanical gardens. You're minutes from there's a windy river that goes through town, and you can do like punting and kayaking and stuff on that river, or there's a walkway along the river, and it's beautiful. So, and if you want to go into the middle of town where all the restaurants are, again, 10-minute walk, something like that. It's great location, and I'd actually prefer to be there than in the middle of town where it's a little more touristy and stuff. So I would, despite not liking the rooms much, I would stay there again. They also, little touches, they give you a teddy bear as a free welcome gift. And
I'm a sucker for the free stuffed animal. Just to put that right out there.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. I like it.
Yeah, and I had booked with free night certificates, and so it was actually 3 separate reservations, and two of the nights they gave us a free bear because it was like a new
separate reservation.
A new reservation. Somehow they figured it out on the 3rd night, I guess.
They're like, no more bears for that guy.
Give us another bear.
Right. A couple bears right over there in his suitcase. He doesn't need any more bears.
And they did have nice turned down chocolates. So
that's
very nice stay, despite the room not being great.
Yeah, it's too bad that the room wasn't great. But so this was a small luxury hotel of the world property. And you're going to talk about another SLH property in a second. So for anybody who's relatively new to this whole award booking scene, Hyatt has a partnership with small luxury hotels of the world. They're not Hyatt properties, but you use Hyatt points to book them. And when you book through Hyatt, you get benefits like you're a globalist, no matter what status you have. You can have no status with Hyatt, and you get free breakfast each day. You get, theoretically, potentially a room upgrade and early or late checkout, or I think it's late 2 p.m. late checkout, I think. But the free breakfast really and the potential for an upgrade are the 2 things I've found to be worthwhile with SLH. So that's nice. Like you said, the couple of SLH places I've stayed, I've wondered if breakfast was just included for everyone, but at the same time, they've generally been really nice places where, for all I know, everybody's just fine with paying for breakfast. So right. I don't know which way it goes, but have you been disappointed by an SLH breakfast yet?
By the breakfast?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think there's been an SLH property where I've walked away being like, breakfast was meh. Almost every time I walk away saying breakfast was pretty nice at that SLH property. I've only been to a couple, but the couple of experiences I've had, I've been pretty happy with. So I just think that's notable because hotel breakfast can be hit or miss most places, but it's been pretty hit at SLH. So that's good. So, all right. So the George, a good breakfast, good location, so-so hotel. What else did you?
Yeah, and you're getting very good value for the price, and it's a good way to use your category 1 through 4 free night certificates if you have them with
That's
Hyatt.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, and Christchurch, I do recommend. It's a beautiful little town. They are still recovering from the earthquake. I can't remember, 2017 maybe. I don't remember when the last earthquake was there, but it doesn't detract from the stay at all. In fact, it's kind of interesting learning about the earthquake and how they're dealing with it, including putting in an unbelievable looking playground right in the middle of the city. It's something they sought recommendations from kids. So what would you like in this playground? And they're building this really big, amazing thing there. So so that's pretty fun. And I do recommend visiting there. We rented a car there and drove drove the rest of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Driving on the left side of the road is a little difficult at first, but driving around New Zealand in general, I found very, very easy. They have big roads just like in America. Almost everything. It's like driving in America, but on the other side, and you do get used to it. So don't be scared about driving New Zealand. I think it's a great thing to do. You'll be able to see a lot more than flying point to point. Just about an hour south of Christchurch is a little town called Oamaru, where that's one where we didn't use points to stay, but you have to visit there at least for a night. It is such an interesting town. The town, I guess, used to be very industrial, and they have a steampunk theme to a lot of the town. If you don't know what steampunk is, look that up. But they have a steampunk museum. And they have a big playground nearby that's all steampunk themed. And we stayed in a hotel that had a bunch of steampunk themes to the hotel itself. So it was very, very fun in that way. And what the town's also known for is blue penguins. You can go and check out this blue penguin colony during the day. They'll let you in and let you look at the little blue penguin houses that they built. They actually have nearby schools build these little wooden houses that the penguins then, I don't know how each penguin picks which house is theirs, but somehow they negotiate. And they're set up in little neighborhoods. So you have these different houses that in sort of clusters all around the property. It's really fun to see this, and they're on little hills, and so it looks a lot like Hobbiton, but smaller and more square than the round doors in Hobbiton. And so that was fun. And then at night, you can go and actually watch the penguins who float back from the sea after fishing during the day. They somehow find each other out in the ocean, hold hands or something. I don't know what they're holding on to each other. And they float in. They call it a raft of penguins that float in together, and then they sort of toddle up a very steep incline and to their little houses that were built for them, and so there's audience stands to watch the penguins come up. So that was really fun as well. So Oamaru, definitely worth a one night stay there. I'm not sure that you need more than that one day and night, but definitely good to do that.
Nice.
Yeah. Then tons of great stuff to do on the southeast coast of New Zealand, which I'm not going to get in details of that right now because we didn't do any point related things there. We stayed in an independent hotel in Dunedin, and then we drove across to the southwest side, where we did a overnight boat ride on Doubtful Sound, which was the most amazing experience of the trip. I loved every minute of that whole thing. Did not book that with points, just paid cash the normal way. And then we stayed in a great little town called Tianau. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but that's right on Tianau Lake, and Again, we stayed in an independent hotel there.
Let's back up for a second, because you went right over that doubtful sound thing. And if you haven't seen the pictures, you should, hopefully they're still on Instagram somewhere. You should go see the pictures from doubtful sound. You should post those in like the Frequent Mailer Insiders or something like that, because that looked incredible. So I know it wasn't point related.
It sure was.
But it was something that I was like, wow, if I get to New Zealand, I got to go do that. Right.
I mean, I don't remember exactly how much it was. It's not a cheap thing to do, but it's worth it. And that is a bucket list thing to do. We also did a day tour of Milford Sound, where it just takes like 2 hours to go out on the boat and come back. And honestly, I was kind of disappointed. Like we'd heard so many great things about Milford Sound, and it is very, very beautiful, but the Doubtful Sound, the whole experience was just so much more amazing in so many ways. It's hard to explain. Doubtful Sound is way, way bigger than Milford Sound. So the overnight trip, you go in and out of different arms of the sound, and you stop and you could go kayaking or swimming. I did both of those. And or you could just ride a little like pontoon boat around if you want to get out. And when they, stop the boat at night, it's so quiet and peaceful and beautiful. And especially if you go in our winter or their summer, the nights are so long that it's still light for a long, long time. So we were out, I think, at like 10 at night, and it was still kind of light out, and you're watching the sunset over the mountains. It's spectacular.
Very good, very good. And did it code as travel? Because that's do you know if the charge coded as travel? Because I'm sure people would be curious. I wonder, if it does.
I expect it did.
Probably right.
It was booked by through a like a tour company.
So probably good chance. So good chance you could use like the Sapphire Reserve $300 travel credit towards it.
A company called Real NZ or NZ, they call it there. It runs like so many of the tours in New Zealand that we booked both of our sound, Doubtful Sound and Milford Sound through them. They were a good company to work with. Then we went to Queenstown, which is beautiful, beautiful town. It's right on the side of a mountain, so it's very, very hilly, and it's along a lake, and so you have views of the lake. You have mountains beyond the lake, and so in all directions you have mountains, and then the beautiful lake. And it is the one downside of Queenstown. It's gotten like in many ways overly touristy. So there's a lot of that, like a haunted house and all kinds of adventure rides you could do on the water and things like that. But it's still, that doesn't take away from how beautiful the town is. And I really loved it. One of the things that made it really special though is there's an SLH property called Eichardt's house, which is
not the haunted
right
house
there. Not the haunted house.
Okay,
it's
good.
not called Eichardt House. Sorry, it's called Eichardt's Private Hotel.
There you go.
And it's right there in the middle of town. I mean, it's hard to explain how iconic this location is. That this is the one location in town that you can't miss. If you go downhill from anywhere, you're going to end up at this hotel. If you look at the lake, if you're along the lake, if you're walking along the lake from just about anywhere, you could and look towards town, Eichardt is going to be right in the middle of your view. Can't miss it. So it's right there in the center of everything, with probably the best close-up lake view. And what I mean by that is there's others that have great lake views that are higher up on the mountain, but further back. So this probably has to have the closest lake view that there is in town. So anyway, so great location. It only has something like, 10 or 13 rooms total.
Wow.
And of those, we were booked directly into what was called a Mountain View Suite, which I think is their lowest room type. And it was a true big suite, beautiful, luxurious, and it did cost 40,000 points per night. It's a category 8 in the Hyatt system, or you could have paid about $1,500 US to stay there per night.
I'd take the 40,000
not
points.
to do.
I'd take the 40,000 point price there.
Yeah,
preferable.
this was a great property. I wish I could tell everyone, if you go to Queenstown, you have to stay there. The reason I can't tell everyone to do that, though, is award availability is really hard to find. I was so lucky that I booked these 4 nights, but whenever I looked after that for any night ever, I couldn't find a single night available. So I don't know what's going on with that, but the service, phenomenal. The free inclusions, phenomenal. The free full breakfast at the restaurant or in your room, $100 food credit, free valet parking, every night. You have an hour drink hour where for us, like it was always private desk. Like no one, because there's not that many guests. So we would go in at like 5:30. The concierge would be there,
and the folks paying $1,500 a night probably don't care about the free drink, right?
That's probably true. So you go into this parlor, and the concierge is there to greet you, serve you these very nice wines, and or other drinks. There's actually a menu. You could get just about any drink you want, and then they actually inform the chef that we're ready, and the chef prepares canapes at that time. And each day they have like a unique creation, actually 2 different unique creations. So you each get 2 little servings of whatever it is, and they were all delicious. I mean, really, like, top restaurant quality, delicious stuff. And it was a great opportunity to chat with the concierge and learn about like recommendations for things to do or places to eat, things like that. So just absolutely loved that, the whole experience of staying at Eichardt's private hotel.
That sounds great. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. So I hope others can find availability. I hope it opens up more than it has recently. That would be great. If you can't, though, I stumbled across, there's another SLH property in town called the Carlin, which also 40,000 points per night, much better availability than Eichart's private hotel, at least as things stand right now. Maybe after I report this, that might change. It is actually more expensive to pay in cash than Eichart's is. It's way up on a hill. Each room has fantastic ocean views, and just big patios, and it looks spectacular. I do have to say one negative of staying there. I did walk up the hill to it. If you're not big into walking up hills, it was extremely tiring to get from town to the Carlin. However, they'll drive you around in a Bentley, so you don't have to worry. Yeah,
that works.
And that's complimentary, including pickup and drop off at the airport from the Carlin. So I would not hesitate to try that out. Yeah. I can't recommend it because I haven't stayed there.
No, it does look very nice though, and it is available when dates when I could probably make it happen. Look, so if you're thinking about booking it, I'm sorry, I just booked whatever. No.
Nick's gonna be booking it up before this.
Exam, I'm like, oh, now I'm on the clock here. I gotta put it out there in the world.
Yeah, I did see that the booking engine let you put in up to 3 adults and 1 kid 2 or younger. If you tried to put in a 4th person who's over 2, it won't let you. It won't let you book it that way.
So I should just book it now while my 2-year-old
for
is
those
still
with
2.
kids. The other thing is that on the screen it did say something like there might be an extra charge for more if you book more than 2 people. So you might want to double check
on that. Yeah.
Because a place like that, that extra charge
could be significant.
Might be like $500 a day per kid or something. I don't know.
It's just another 500. That's all. Right. I have been lucky in general. I got to say that I've seen that before on places and worried because of exactly that. I figure if they're charging $2,500 a night, whatever the extra fee is that seems nominal to the person who's paying 2,500 a night is not going to be nominal
Yeah.
to me. But I've been very lucky so far. Any place that said that, I have not yet been charged an extra person fee for
Okay.
not yet. So I feel like it's the kind of
Right.
warning that goes up on things oftentimes as like a catch-all. But with
Yeah.
SLH, I feel like it's potentially an issue because I won't imagine that Hyatt would have that information necessarily for each individual property, since they're a little bit more boutique sort of. So
Right.
yeah, that's
right.
a good point.
Right.
It's a good point. I should make a call.
And and just remember, teach your 3-year-old that they are 2, in case anyone asks.
Well, you see, but my younger's only 2, so I'm in good shape. So as long as I make that happen before his birthday, we're good. I don't know that I will.
Soon.
I don't
That's
know.
right.
I don't know that I
no,
will. But
no lying required.
but yeah, exactly.
All
right.
So some other options that I noticed in Queenstown for points, but I can't review because I didn't stay. There's a Crown Plaza that's right in town. Looks like the rooms have beautiful lake views. So that might be a nice option. There's also up the hill to sort of towards the Carlin, there's a Holiday Inn Express, which looks like it has beautiful water views, and it also has a very unique architecture. So check out the reviews of that, because that might actually be worth staying at. It looked, at least, like I said, from the outside, it looks very interesting. It might be a very nice hotel. Across the lake, there's a Hilton that's right on the water, and that would be very nice if you want to stay somewhere quieter. I think it's quieter. It's very close to the airport, but at the same time, when we were visiting there, we walk there it's about 5-mile walk along the water to get there from town. And we enjoyed lunch there. We didn't hear any airplane sounds. So that was fine. It just depends whether you want to be in town a lot. If you want to be in town a lot, I wouldn't recommend that Hilton. The other two would be better, but if you wanted to be more quiet, I think that would be a good choice. And the other thing I'll mention sort of in general about other options for staying around New Zealand is IHG. They have an Intercontinental in Wellington that looks very nice, that I was going to book if I went to Wellington. The other thing is there are tons of Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties that you can book with IHG points. Some of them are super high end, like the Eichardts or the Carlin that I was describing, but IHG doesn't have an award chart. So when you book those, look for prices to be like, for example, 180,000 points per night type of range.
And I knew you were going to say that, and I almost jumped in before you did, because I'm looking at specific dates, because there's like a couple of days where I probably could get to Queenstown. It wasn't on my radar at all until I saw your pictures, and I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, maybe I can make that work. And so I'm looking at those IHG properties that you were just talking about. And I was going to ask you, okay, between the Holiday Inn Express at like 23,000 IHG points, or there's a Holiday Inn that's 19,000, or paying 40,000 for Eichardt, which is obviously a significant difference in terms of cost, because you could buy the points for the IHG properties for under $100 a night, or just over $100 a night anyway. So I was about to ask that, and then I see that the Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties there are 40,000 a night, or 47,500 a night. So now, what would you do? Would you stay at Eichardt's? Would you stay at one of these? These are difficult debates sometimes when you're looking at that, because 40,000 Hyatt points is a lot of points.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I love my luxury. I love being able to stay places with points that I wouldn't stay at otherwise paying cash. I don't know. There were no Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties actually available when I went, so I didn't do enough research to say.
You're right. I mean, they're usually
are these luxury properties
tons of points if they're available at all. I was surprised when I just saw, and I'm sure that if you look on whatever dates you're going to look on, they're going to be 180,000 points. And just I got lucky in terms of the dates that I happened to look at. But yeah, so you didn't research those. Oh, now I'm going to have to take a look.
Yeah, well, so there's a huge range of Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties, and so they're not all high-end luxury. Some are cheaper but boutique-y type of things. And so I would just look into that and see the reviews and see what you'd get. I had found when I was doing my searches, I had found one. It wasn't in Queenstown, but I had found one available that was more in that 170,000 range that I'm talking about, and it did look like a property that would be like bucket list type of thing. It was north of Christchurch and with up on a mountain with views of the ocean and looked spectacular, but
yeah,
it didn't fit our plans, and I didn't have that many
a lot of
IHG points.
IHG points, a lot of IHG points. That's right. I think I see probably the property you're talking about not available, but yeah. So and those properties, those Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties in Queenstown look like they're not incredibly expensive anyway. So they're probably, there probably is a difference in luxury between a place like Eichardt's. And now, if you haven't seen Greg's review, by the way, of course, we're talking about all this, and you can check out the review for Eichart's Hotel, and we'll have that up. I don't know, one of these sides in my head, probably a link to that. So you'll want to check that out because that does look awesome. And this Carlin place, like he mentioned here, if you look at the Princess Suite that books into, that looks awfully amazing, also.
Yeah, yeah. And let me say, if you're not if you're not worried about the luxury part of it, you just want a place to stay in a good location. The two IHG properties I mentioned, the Crown Plaza, which is right in town, or the Holiday Inn Express, which is a short walk from town but uphill. So I would happily stay in either of those locations, and you're still going to be close enough to all the action, and I think have much better views. Our room didn't have particularly good views itself. You had to go out on the balcony to see views. It was the rest of the hotel, like the restaurant, the Eichardt's I'm talking about. You walk into the breakfast, into the restaurant for breakfast, and you see this like just amazing view that like had my jaw dropping every day I went in. You might have that kind of view right from your room at one of these IHG properties. So there could be an advantage to doing that and save a lot of money or a lot of points, depending on how you're booking it.
Yeah. All right. Very good. So we've got a bunch of great options for Hyatt. If you've got Hyatt points, seems like New Zealand is a potentially a really interesting destination, or if you're going to New Zealand anyway, Hyatt points could certainly be your friend, which is surprising because in years past, we've always talked about how Hyatt has a pretty limited footprint. They aren't everywhere you need to be. And I feel like in New Zealand, not all chains have a great footprint to begin with. I mean, IHG seems to have a lot, but otherwise I feel like you don't really find a lot of great chain options really in New Zealand or Australia for that matter. But
that's absolutely true. I was pretty shocked how little Marriott had going on. And so I didn't book anything with Marriott. I booked 10 out of my 14 nights with Hyatt points, which is just incredible. And the others were all independent. Well, one was the overnight on Doubtful Sound, but the other three were just booked independently. And so I did get some of my Capital One Venture X, or my wife's actually, $300 travel credit by booking at least one of those through there. So.
Good. We got to use that at least. So that's but that's good to keep in mind that type of credit can be useful for that kind of trip. Because Australia, I've run into the same thing. I've done a few road trips in Australia and run into the same thing where there just aren't very many chain properties, and so you end up either booking something independent through some boutique hotel website, I guess, or using like hotels.com and something of that nature. So you may as well be using your Capital One Venture credit. And so good point there. Another option when you're looking for a backup plan there. And of course, obviously you could use Chase points through the Chase travel portal. So you got other options to book too, but that's enough of that. So back on the flights very quickly, I wanted to mention, I didn't mention when we were talking about it and should have, that we do have a resource for that. And not only should have mentioned it, but I probably should have reviewed it more closely because there are a couple other great options we didn't talk about. I'm not going to get into them because we've talked for long enough, but I'm going to have a link in the description and again above my head here somewhere to the best ways to get to the South Pacific using points and miles, because there are a couple of other good options. If you were to find American Airlines award availability, you might want to book through Etihad. There's some other stuff in there. So I could go through Honolulu because there's a flight from Hawaii to New Zealand to Auckland. So there's a few options there to discuss. So check that post out for other ways to get to New Zealand if you want to make this kind of a trip happen. Just recognize that it might be a little tough to get there. Once you get there, though, you got all sorts of luxury with your Hyatt points.
Yeah. And New Zealand is great. let me just say that what a beautiful country and beautiful people. They were so friendly. It's just so nice to travel around there. And it's sort of like super easy for Americans because of, everyone speaks English. Just everything is easy there, and the dollar's very strong right now, so everything felt cheap. So that was nice too.
So a good destination. You overall 2 thumbs up
Overall,
on New
great
Zealand.
Destination. Yes, loved it. What is this week's question of the week?
This week's question of the week didn't want to come out here. Mike and our frequent miler insiders asks, anybody able to confirm that I can do a free stopover with Alaska points going from Tokyo to Honolulu, stopping over, and then continuing on to San Diego? I tried doing it with the multi-city search and it wouldn't pull up anything. But when I did the legs separately, there was availability. So do I need to call to book this? Is it possible? Now, we know I mentioned earlier that when you make a booking with Alaska Miles, use your Alaska Mileage Plan miles, you can have a stopover on a one-way award. Is it possible to have Honolulu as your stopover point? Alaska serves Honolulu, of course, from a number of different places, not only San Diego. And then, of course, you could fly across the pond and with their different partners, like, for instance, Japan Airlines, I assume is the airline that he was flying with here. Can you do a stopover in Honolulu? Do you know the answer, Greg?
I assume you can, as long as you are, as long as you're booking Alaska metal. So you're flying on Alaska Airlines from Honolulu to the States, as opposed to like American Airlines, because you can't mix 2 partners on one award. So that might be what he ran into, is my guess.
Well, I might have run into the same assumption, but and this is the reason I brought this up is because I probably would have had the same thought as Greg. But when I'm not sure about that kind of thing, one of the places that I'll usually go is Frequent Miler Insiders, because I know somebody there has tried to do it before and will know the answer. So that's why it was smart of Mike to ask in the Facebook group, because there were people well-versed in Alaska that were able to answer and say, no, with Alaska, you can't do a stopover if it's not, let me reword that. You can only have a stopover in the international gateway city of their partners. So for instance, if you want to book an itinerary with Cathay Pacific, you can do a stopover in Hong Kong, but, and I've run into this before, you can't do a stopover, for instance, in Seattle. I ran into that. I tried to do that actually once with one I booked a long time ago. So it's got to be hub cities. And I believe it may be possible with some hub cities in the United States, but I don't know exactly what qualifies. However, Honolulu doesn't. So that was a piece of information that I thought was kind of valuable for how those stopovers work. And I also thought it was worth mentioning because, again, Frequent Miler Insiders is a good place to get that kind of a question answered, because you're definitely going to have people who've run into trying to do those kind of things a bunch of times and will have valuable information for you. So no stopover in Honolulu, actually, in that case.
That's really good to know. American used to offer stopovers on awards, but only at those kind of hub city, or
exactly.
I forget what international gateways, basically.
Yeah.
But they eliminated this a long time ago. Yeah. So, but that gives me a point of reference anyway to say Alaska has something similar going on.
Which frankly, I never had.
Not for their own flights.
I never had that point of reference with Alaska as to where the rule was. So I've called and run into things where they said, no, you can't do a stopover here or there, and I didn't know why, and I didn't spend the time to think about why or learn about why. So I thought that was an interesting question anyway.
Because it's very interesting, because they don't impose that rule on their own flights. You can do a stopover anywhere if you're just flying Alaska itself. I don't know if that's extends to their partner American Airlines. Probably not. I don't know. That's a great question, actually. So a question of the week just produced a question of the week. Can you do that with American Airlines? So if you know, comment in the the comments on the show here on YouTube or on the website or whatever, wherever you're looking at this. Speaking of wherever you're looking at this, you should definitely sign up for our email list, and wherever you're watching this, you should make sure to like it. Give us a thumbs up, leave us some feedback, share it with your friends. Again, if you want to join the email list, you go to frequentmiler.com/subscribe. Again, that's frequentmiler.com/subscribe. And if you have questions or feedback that you'd like to be considered for a future episode, you want to email that to mailbag@frequentmiler.com.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.